First off, on behalf of the Music and Entertainment Industry Educators Association, thank you so much for joining us today, especially because I know several people that are coming onto this call just spent the weekend with us at the annual summit. I want to say thank you to all the volunteers, all the presenters, and all the people that helped bring that summit to fruition. And also thank you for joining us today. The MEIEA Meets initiative, as many of you know, really came out of a concern early this summer as we started to look at the world and say, oh my goodness, what's going on? Things are changing. We're under lockdown. It looks like this is going to be a challenging semester, both in terms of protocol, safety, changes in higher ed. And so mostly drawn from the urge of membership, MEIEA membership, we decided to start hosting these informal MEIEA Meets events just to keep the conversation going, to share amongst ourselves what's going on, and also to empower everybody because we might hit a topic that you can bring into the classroom the next afternoon. So today we're going to be talking with two different individuals that I think most of you probably have some familiarity with, Emily White and Jeff McClusky. And I think we'll begin. I want to talk to these two and unpack a little bit about what they do, because mirroring a strategy that I know we share with a lot of our students, there's multiple asterisks under everyone's name, from management to radio promotion to advocacy to education. Emily, you're on my left, so maybe I could start with you. If you could do a brief introduction into who you are and what you are working on today.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for having me, and it's great to see everyone. So my name is Emily White. I'm a co-founding partner at Collective Entertainment in New York City. Normally, we do management and consulting for musicians and comedians. I say that because I'm also the founder of #IVoted, where we're producing the largest music quote festival of the year. It's all about voter turnout. Fans RSVP to check out the stream with their with a selfie at home with their blank and unmarked ballot, or from outside their polling place. If a student is international, or if someone is underage or not a US citizen, there's info on our website, ivotedfestival.com, on how they RSVP. And we're gonna smash the single night record for the largest, sorry. I needed to meditate a little bit more this morning. We're gonna smash the record for the largest single night concert in history. It's on election night. I'm leading a team of 175 right now, so that's why my for-profit company is a little bit on hold right now. I'm also the author of 2 books, Interning 101 and How to Build a Sustainable Music Career and Collect All Revenue Streams. The latter is a #1 Amazon bestseller.
That is quite a few asterisks, Emily. That's something that we will come and unpack a little bit later. Also joining us today is Jeff McClusky. Jeff, could you briefly introduce yourself and what you're working on right now?
I would, but I can't follow that. I just want to attend and listen to Emily. So, yeah, my name is Jeff McClusky. My company, Jeff McClusky and Associates, has done radio promotion for 40 years. We're celebrating our 40th year. By the way, at 39 years, I was embarrassed, and I felt I was becoming the person I never wanted to be in those pictures with young artists and program directors. But I thank Monty Lippman at Universal, because at 40 he said, "Jeff, stand up and be proud. You're the longest in your space, and you have credibility and relationships in history." So we are going to celebrate quite a bit. But in it, yeah, so we've done, I mean, I had a career before that with Columbia Records in the late 70s. But we do independent radio promotion for the major labels and independent labels. So that's our primary business, which has paid our bills, put my children through college, and given us a wonderful life. We're on retainer with all the major labels, so we do a portion of their radio promotion work in alternative music and pop and hip hop. We have managed artists in our career time period. And I have a consulting business where I consult international labels and independent artists and labels on career development, marketing plans, tour marketing. So we have our hands in a few different things. But in addition to that, I think it was, we started an intern program in the late 90s because I had a daughter who wanted to get in the business, who wanted to come work for me, didn't want to come work by herself, wanted to bring friends. And so I had to creatively say, well, if I'm going to have your friends, I have to provide something besides getting coffee and answering telephones. So I say it because I'm grateful that we learned how to engage with young people, college students, but also high school students, and develop a program which is now called the We Launch program. And we've helped 75 students get into careers in the music industry, 3 record company presidents today, many successful entrepreneurs. And when you said pivot, Emily, many who have just decided along the way that this isn't what they want to do. And that's okay too. So, so we developed the program. I do a lot of speaking around the country. I love doing it. I like recruiting for my company. I like recruiting for the music industry. And so in addition to these different kinds of programs, my older daughter does a concert with the C3 guys called Nelaruski for Special Olympics, the Lollapalooza people. So we have one of the after shows every year for Special Olympics, and we're 15 years in on that. Wonderful thing that I'm glad I get to do. And then the final piece on the intern program, like Sarita Stewart, who I saw yesterday, where she and Ken Spring were doing their Maymester called Festival Immersion a few years ago, and they were connecting with the Bonnaroo people to do Bonnaroo University. And she was telling me about it because I had spoken at Belmont regularly, and 20 kids go in tour buses, and they have 4 days at Bonnaroo where each student has to interview attendees for consumer research. And I just asked her if would you like to have industry interaction as well? Maybe I could go to the C3 or Bonnaroo people and set up a couple of meetings a day in the media area so they could do Q&As with Ashley Capps and Khalid and Courtney Stewart and artists and managers and executives. And they loved the idea. The Bonnaroo C3 people embraced it, and it was a home run year 1. So we did it again year 2. And then Houston Powell and Charlie Walker at C3 also embraced the idea. So we would have done the first Lollapalooza U this year live with DePaul, which is actually a 3-credit class called Lollapalooza University. It had to move online. I was afraid of that. I'm used to having people in the office, and yet instead of just having the 20 students from DePaul, we invited all our former interns and employees. So we had 50 people on Zoom calls instead of 20 students. So again, don't be careful what you ask for, because you might even get more than you ask for. So education is really important to me as it pertains to mentorship and education as far as learning new technologies and the evolution of the business, which is just unbelievable. I mean, I like being around young people because I like to share my experience and the things that I do well with their consumption habits and their music habits. Then we get to be interactive and learn from each other. But not only do I like it, I feel like it's necessary, absolutely necessary. I mean, I was just on a Zoom call with 2 of the heads of artist relations at Spotify, and that was a 1-hour class, and I'm like I'm going to ask if I can sign up for a semester if they have such a thing, because there's just so much there's so much available to artists. I mean, I'm involved with artists. I want them to know, and I know a fraction of what I heard today. So, and that's okay. You know, again, putting yourself around people that can fill in the spots that you don't know is key. So I'm very bullish on my business, which I know we get into a little bit, you know, on another question, on what it looks like, what changed, why it's actually doing well today, when in April I was worried about staying in business with the staff that I had. And I'm very excited about music and where the business is and our place, the education. I think as I evolve over the next few years, full-time speaking, mentoring, probably be, you know, more and more of that. And so that's my current place.
That makes lots of sense. And I think I want to use a word that you brought up just a few minutes ago, and you also shared before this call. I want to talk about evolution. Now, one of the goals of today's talk is to look at the ways that business is interfacing with students, to look and brainstorm about opportunities for more experiential learning platforms like that. But before we get to that question, I'd like to talk about the evolution of where both of you are at and your businesses are at right now in 2020, because there has been an evolution since March, thankfully. We know a lot more about this virus. We know a lot more about safety. We also have many more businesses and industries starting to ramp back up. But I'd like to get sort of a street level from both of you in your worlds. What has evolved for you since March? And then we'll talk about the education piece. Emily, how about you?
Yeah, definitely. So, you know, we're very fortunate at our for-profit company that we work with really innovative artists. So we work with an artist named Julia Nunes, and she already had been releasing a song on the 1st of the month this year anyway, starting in January, a song and a new video. So she has immense compassion for the pandemic, but, you know, and of course she had to cancel a spring tour, but it was kind of, I think her attitude was like, okay, is it the 1st of the month yet? I'm still writing, I'm still recording, I'm still creating. And, you know, I had a few ideas on maybe scheduling like a webcast tour or something like that, but she is planning a big blowout webcast that, you know, so we're going to focus on that one, and knowing her, not knowing her, we'll have an exclusive piece of merch at that webcast that, knowing her, will be some sort of inside joke that, you know, with the audience at that. And then, you know, between this call, well, not the first part, but Julie is a 6-figure Kickstarter artist. So this is the part that's between this call. You know, she said, I want to announce my next Kickstarter at this webcast show and what all these tracks have been leading to, right? And that came from her, that didn't come from us. So, you know, I was speaking in Kevin Lyman's class at USC, and he and the students were asking like, well, what areas, you know, should we look at for job growth and things like that? And of course, there's you know, a ton of investment going on in webcasting. I'll talk about I Voted in a second, but our webcasting partner at I Voted is Mandolin. They're actually based in Indianapolis, and they just closed a $5 million seed round. But at the same time, it's actually quite simple as far as I'm concerned. Always go back to artists. Like, they are why we're here. They're the foundation of the industry. Like I said, they are writing, they are recording, they are producing, they are distributing. So we don't always have to think about, I mean, look, I used to tour manage. My heart is absolutely, you know, with agencies, with venues. Like, it's, if you know, when I was 23, I was touring the world. So if you would have told me at 23 I couldn't do that, I would have been super pissed off. So I get it. I hear from these students, but always go back to artists. And then, you know, I Voted is the biggest pivot. And as quickly as I can, I'll share, you know, what we did. I kind of shared what we're doing and where we're going. But I'm based in New York City, but I'm originally from Wisconsin, where the presidential election was decided in 2016 by 22,000 votes and change. It was decided in Michigan by 10,000 votes and change. And my tour manager brain was like, those are venues, you know, like that's our basketball arena. And I'd also read that voter turnout was down in Milwaukee, where I'm from. And so I thought, why don't we put together some sort of sick concert and tie in voting? And I realized if we took the concept national, we could have that much more impact. So that's what we did for the 2018 midterm elections. We activated over 150 venues in 37 states to let fans in on election night who show a selfie from outside their polling place. A ton of amazing artists performed: Billie Eilish, Playboi Carti, Maggie Rogers. We got all this organic press, and it was just myself and an intern working on it. It was an idea that caught fire. So now we've pivoted, obviously under the pandemic, and we've been inviting artists to perform via webcast. Like I said, fans can access the stream by RSVPing with a selfie at home with their blank and unmarked ballot, or from outside their polling place. Like I said, there's more information on ivotedfestival.com for non-US citizens, underage fans, and ineligible voters. And then instead of just getting artists that we know personally and that we hope people will like, or that we think that they'll like, we partnered with Chartmetric, and we've been inviting the top streaming acts in and or from each state. We're still not funded. We're an executive team of 100% women and a booking team of over 70% women and people of color. The latter is a first for the industry until someone tells me it isn't, but statistically that means we don't get the funding that our white male counterparts get. So my point on that is we're focused on 20, 25 swing states. I'd love to do all 50 in 2022 when we're hopefully funded. And through that, over 600 artists have confirmed. So like I said, unfortunately, it's the largest music festival of the year, and it's going to smash the record for the biggest single night digital concert in history, all in support of voter turnout. And like I said, I'm leading a team of 175. Many of them are your students. But it's also super high level people like Kevin Lyman. And, Kevin even says like, gosh, like this Slack team, I feel like I'm virtually walking backstage at a festival or something. So my goal was always to activate the entire industry. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. And so, yeah, I mean, as an entrepreneur, like I'm just all about, like my brain can't not solve problems. I actually don't wish the entrepreneur brain on most people, but I think my biggest takeaway is that, the I voted concept is both simple and impactful, as opposed to when I write, articles about sustainable streaming plans. No one seems to care about that, but it's just a good reminder for your students, like take a look at what's wrong and think about what makes sense and how they can solve those problems. It's actually not anything to overthink.
Emily, thank you. That's a lot that I want to readdress, especially as we look to this initiative in education. But I do want to jump back to Jeff just quickly, briefly, to go from being concerned about keeping employees online and available to now being robust. Jeff, I think conventional wisdom would say, you're on retainer to the majors. There's a lot of built up anticipated work. What drove the fear in your organization, and what do you think has helped drive what we could call a rebound and to leave you excited today since the lockdown began?
Well, when we let me be sure of this. I was in New York with a band that we manage on March 13th or whatever night that was, and they were so this is a fairly early stage band, second national tour, very good band for students from or former students from Auburn, band called the Brook and the Bluff from Nashville, and we have about $70,000 on the books, and very excited about 2020 touring and fall festivals, and they got the notice that it was over, and everyone went home, and they're just a microcosm of what happened across the world, and they didn't go home to their jobs at Starbucks because Starbucks was closed too, so they had to go home to zero. Fortunately, Music Cares and the other organizations that supported them, between unemployment and grants and even payroll protection program, there were some great things for them. When Emily says it goes back to the artists. So we're going to see some artists making the best music of their career because they've been writing so much. And we're going to see artists go away that weren't committed. I think maybe doesn't directly answer the question, but I will answer the question. I've been through many ups and downs of the music business, and fortunately, I think I can speak well to classes on resiliency and getting back up when you have to. I was in the record business when, we were in the right place at the right time, when the record business was in the 90s, when it was unbelievably strong and we made a lot of money, and it completely collapsed with technology that the record companies didn't know how to handle in the early 2000s. The live music business really ramped up from there because of that, because John Silva told Dave Grohl, by the way, I can't predict how many records you're going to sell, so you're going to have to play. I know you used to like to play, now you have to play. And the last year was the enormous for Live Nation's, bigger than all the record companies combined. So that industry, the live part of the music business, had its best era, and now they've collapsed. And so what happens from there, between virtual and the comeback of live and those making good music, I mean, it's very, very crippling to a number of people, but it's also opportunity again. Mark Geiger spoke in our DePaul class a few weeks ago, and Charlie Walker and Perry Farrell, and they were like, when there's blood in the streets, there's fortunes to be made. And Mark Geiger was actually saying, I don't think it's going to really happen much till 2022. So brace in for further decline of venues closing, festivals not happening, et cetera, et cetera. So, but the quick answer, I have a budget like any business owner, and the budget was based on a certain amount of revenue that we were projecting through March, including radio promotion for majors, independent artist consulting, artist management, and international artist tour marketing. And the tour marketing part was 25%. And by April 1st, between March 15th and April 1st, it was all gone. So that was a lot of revenue to lose quickly. And there was some government assistance, didn't come as quickly, but enough. And I saw that by the end of April, early May, the international labels and managers and the indies, it was almost like a collective conclusion that, well, I still got to make music. I got to put it out, because if I don't, I'm definitely going away. They will forget about me if I don't, if I don't put out music. So some of the business came back. So the international tour marketing came back as marketing support, more exposure support. And so that was good. And of course, that $200,000 T&E budget for across our staff went to zero. So between what we saved and that, and myself as, an elder statesman around my area of the industry, I think just, and such a people person. I mean, I want to walk up and down the halls and interrupt people all the time. I actually got to see my young people that could pivot and work out of home pretty easily. And as much as I hated it in the beginning, I saw people were productive, they were focused, they were hitting numbers, and they were doing actually better than anybody expected. So gut check for me on, hey, Jeff, doesn't have to be the way you think it has to be. And so I think the future will be, whatever combination that is. I've been on 2 airplanes in the past month, the first 2 that I've been on since March. I didn't even remember my Southwest free Wi-Fi password. But change is good, change is difficult, and it isn't easy to embrace necessarily. but on the other side of it. So right now, my wife and I have had 100 dinners together. She said that's the first 100 we've had in 38 years of marriage. So I would tell you that May, June, July, August, September were the best May through September that I've had in years. And that I'm very excited about feeling confident that I can still get through things that don't seem that I'll be able to get through. I mean, that just gives you self-confidence and which we have again. And so I am excited about that. And again, Emily, you're an entrepreneur, of course. When you're doing okay, when you're paying your bills, you can be proactive. When it's really in a tough time, then you have to play defense. Defense is a really tough thing to live with when you're trying to be creative and think on the other side of the curve. Offense lets you do that. So now we're playing offense, and we were able to make choices. So that's why I'm very excited. Now, there will be a portion we probably have a chance to get to, the evolution of media consumption, and people say, oh my gosh, radio promotion, what's happening there? That's a whole nother topic, of course. Right. I've got some tackling to do. But anyway, so that's why I'm bullish. Expenses are down, business is focused, business is up, people are putting out great music. We're getting a lot of business and feeling great about it.
That's great. And you mentioned several things, as did Emily, that I want to sort of go back to, and that's outcomes, and that's student outcomes, right? Because we're trying to prepare the next generation to fulfill their dreams and their expectations. And Jeff even mentioned that several of the people that have gone through the Jeff McClusky internship programs have gone on to be heads of major labels. Jeff mentioned resilience and adaptability. So I want to talk about looking at this evolution of the world. Emily, looking at the 600 things you're trying to juggle on your list right now, what are the skills? What are the skills that you need young people to have to come in and intern for you, to come in and volunteer for I Voted, to come in and help make a difference that you need on a daily basis? And what do you think are the opportunities that are going to help get them there?
Yeah. The skill, well, I wrote a whole book about the skills and Interning 101, which I'm not trying to sell books, but I didn't set out to be an author. I felt like a lot of students were showing up at internships, and I was teaching a lot of basics that are really difficult to teach in the classroom. So I wrote what I called the Intern Manifesto for our company, because I figured if they had this handbook, they could reference that. And then we could work on higher level things together, which is usually what students want. And I asked a couple of great interns, I'm like, if I turn this into like a 100-page how-to book, would this be helpful for you and your classmates? And they were like, yes. So there's a lot of basics in there about email skills, Slack, reading everything from the bottom up. But really it kind of, especially in our 100% digital workspace right now, it's being reliable. At our company, and it's a little harder to, ask this when everybody's volunteering at I Voted, but, I respond to everything within 24 business hours. So what that means is, I guess the other way to look at it when we have those expectations for interns at the for-profit company is, if I send something to a student at 4 p.m. on a Friday, they have until 4 p.m. on Monday to get back to me. I'm also doing that to try to keep things, I need to think of a better word, but sane, basically. I'm not saying you have to respond every 2 seconds. And there are obviously a lot of people who do that. But what I'm trying to say is get back to everyone, do the things you say you're going to do, and even at I Voted, I'm not upset because everybody is, in classes and balancing so much right now. But, if I'm beating a student on the 24-hour business rule, if I'm nudging them in Slack being like, hey, can you please respond to this? That's what they need to be better at, right? Also, again, I'm not very chill, but I'm trying to be chill by saying you have 24 business hours to get back to me. There are tons of people that are going to expect students to respond much faster than that. So I think just a reputation for reliability, like I said, doing the things that you say you're going to do is really important. being mindful of when you ask questions, you know, maybe not at like 10 in the morning on a Monday. Got distracted by a text message, sorry. Trying to figure things out before you ask, right? Because you know, that's how I learned, and I'm sure many people here. This was more when I was entry level at a company called Madison House, but I couldn't ask my bosses how to do things every 2 seconds. Like, I had to figure it out, right? And then you learn those problem solving skills. So yeah, but just you know, getting back to everyone is going to get you really, really far, and it helps us. If I'm chasing the student, that's not a good sign, and there's still quite a bit of that going on.
Well, there's actually quite a few educators on the call, and so I wanted to turn this around to Denise and Mehmet and Kim and Chris and Eric and Gigi. What questions do you have for Jeff and Emily today? Where are you trying to brainstorm opportunities to find that bridge between the private sector and your students? What's worked for you, and what can we steer the conversation towards now?
I don't mind going first, actually. Hi, Emily. Nice to meet you. Hi, Jeff. Good to see you again. We met in Chicago a couple of years back when you did the keynote for one of the MEIEA summits.
Yes, yes.
Nice to see you again. Thank you so much for the conversation today. I wanted to ask a question. It's for both of you, really. My students have struggled mightily for internships this summer because everything was remote for the most part. And they're still struggling this semester. Some actually had to move their internships from the summer to the fall because of the fact that they weren't able to find something that really spoke to their interests. What would you advise to students who are looking for internships, whether it be part-time, in-person, or remotely, or hybrid? And if any of the skill sets have changed, or rather, what skill sets they need to now add to their sort of like, you know, list of things that they need to be able to manage. Obviously, you talked about communication, Emily, and which is really, really key. And this is something that we always stress in our education here. What kind of different skill sets do they need to know now, master, or at least be able to juggle in addition to what they had to do before in the age of the pandemic?
And I'm sorry if you said this, where do you teach?
Oh, I teach at the Hart School, which is a music conservatory in Hartford, Connecticut.
Great.
And we have music, dance, and theater, but for the most part, the majority of our students are musicians.
Great. So yeah, I get that a lot of internships have been canceled. I was honestly like pissed off to hear that. I think it's, I mean, no offense, but to anyone who canceled internships, it's really like backwards thinking, because on one hand, a lot of the skills are exactly the same. You know, it's no different than if I'm in Japan with a client, an intern is going to be interfacing with me, you know, in Slack, text message, not really email. That's another story. But so yeah, those digital skills are really, really crucial. And I would argue, you know, there's almost, I mean, again, there's canceled internships, so hopefully this makes sense, but there's almost more opportunity in a way because it levels the playing field a little bit, because you don't have to, you know, spend money to be in a major city if that's where, you know, they were planning on interning. Now, obviously, a huge component that's missing is the in-person networking, getting to know people, but that's what we're doing right now, you know, and I saw that clearly very early on. Hofstra does a great job with a student-run music industry conference in the spring. So I spoke on a few panels at that, but they also set up one-on-one networking sessions. And I don't know if it was your school, but I remember speaking to a student from Connecticut, and I remember speaking to a student at USC, and they had found this, you know, Hofstra's on Long Island, this Hofstra student-run music industry conference, and they were connecting with people like me and my business partner and a bunch of great people. So, you know, similar to in real life, students need to be proactive and find, you know, these online conferences, online networking opportunities. And I think, maybe not for me right now, when I voted, but there's almost a little more time to get some one-on-one or to get, you know, some mentorship. So again, they just have to tweak their thinking a little bit. And then again, always go back to artists. Like, a lot of people know this about my story, but I met a band called the Dresden Dolls when I was in college, and I introduced myself to the singer Amanda Palmer when they played at my school. I was nervous, and I said, you know, I'm interning at WBCN. I write for a local music magazine. Let me know if you ever need help with anything. They were a local band, but they were a local band on the rise. And Amanda said, can you come over tomorrow? And I became that band's, you know, merch person, tour manager, day-to-day manager. That was my first job out of college, hired by their management company. It really set me up for my entire career. That was an internship that was never posted, that I didn't like apply for or anything. I just asked this artist if they needed help, right? So again, it's like, and I'm sure there's a lot of, you know, musicians on this call who are also educators, like that's where it starts. So you just have to reach out and find it and create your own internship. And even at my company, like we've never advertised for an intern ever because they always come to us. So just encourage your students to reach out. It's not always like a formal thing. And even their dream internship, like might be a place that's so busy, they hadn't thought about having interns or coming up with some sort of program. So maybe they can get in there and help. It's like, we're all creative people. And I think we need to encourage our students to tap into that creativity, and that it's not only is it, yeah, I was going to say like, it's not going to fit into a box, and it's never going to fit into a box. And Scott so brilliantly said in April, and I quote him on this all the time. And again, that's very early in the pandemic. I was speaking in his class, and he's like, and Jeff alluded to this too, this is Napster for the concert industry, you know? And like, we still have a recorded music industry after Napster, right? So again, like, and you know, I think almost all of us can speak to this as adults, like who in the industry, well, maybe Jeff, but who has had the same job for a long time, but not Jeff, right? Like he was at major label, he manages, he does other things. So we just need to remind students, like, it's not always about like getting that job and then you're going to get these benefits and then you're going to move up the chain. It's just like, yeah, no one saw, you know, these layoffs at agencies coming because, you know, like Jeff said, the live industry has been where it's at, you know, financially, just like the recorded music industry was where it's at before that. So yeah, I'm going to keep saying it. Just keep going back to artists. They need help, and they're the foundation of our industry, and they're why we're here.
I'll sneak in with a question here. Emily, I think this is for you. I have students who are interested in doing management internships. Mm-hmm. And we, of course, can go to the big companies, which have something on their websites. But how do young people, and how do us more experienced people who are educators, how do we make contact with managers?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult because you all are in the background and many prefer to stay there. So how do we connect our students to independent managers?
Sure. Well, first, I would encourage them to manage each other. That's what I do in my management class at NYU. You know, you're building your network from day one. I know that's not what you're asking. And there's a really powerful private Facebook group called Artist Managers Connect. I encourage you to get in there. If they block you for some reason, just let me know, Kim. And, you know, my heart was really warmed this morning. I haven't read the whole thread, but someone posted about I Voted. And there's a huge chain of managers that I don't know that are probably younger and newer. They're like, my band's playing this, and I have an artist playing I Voted, and da-da-da-da-da-da. And that's a huge thing that, you know, traditional managers or industry people don't understand about what we're doing. Because again, we have invited the top streaming artists in and or from each state. So very early on, you know, sometimes I would hear like, well, where are the headliners? And, you know, our COO and I were talking about this. Like, if you remember in 2016, right before the election, Hillary was out with like Bruce Springsteen, Beyonce. I love Beyonce. You know, Jay-Z. And I was so impressed. I was like, oh my gosh, she is out with everyone. Well, I actually talked to the woman at the Biden campaign who booked that. And she said, she's like, I booked the most, I forgot how she said it, but the most historic surrogate campaign ever, and I failed. And what I'm trying to say is Bruce Springsteen, Beyonce, and Jay-Z are not in the data. People are not listening to those artists right now. And so when I see this chain blow up, you know, in this private managers Facebook grouping, like my artist is playing and my artist is playing, like it might not be artists that we have heard of because we live in this infinite world of digital music, but it's what people are listening to. So no offense to our friends at Red Light and Vector and all that, that's great, but there's a ton of people managing artists right now. They definitely need help. So if you can get into that artist managers Facebook group, say, I have students who want to learn management, they want to help, you will get managers saying, yes, please come help me.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are you, Kim, what school are you at?
Appalachian State University in North Carolina.
Oh, so we met before.
Yes, I had to see who was speaking, but Jeff, yes, we crossed paths.
We met at the Pinewood Social in Nashville restaurant.
Yep, and also out in Santa Fe, New Mexico, I believe.
Nice.
Yeah, and yes, because you had Rainbow Kitten Surprise.
Yes.
Nice job.
Yeah, well, interesting story, but aren't they all?
Yeah. Emily, did you start at WBCN?
That was my second internship. Yeah, I worked for Chachi and obviously Oedipus, and it was a great experience.
Okay. You know that's where I started too.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's a separate conversation. How interesting. And so what Emily mentioned though, creating internships, obviously Emily, that, you're a go-getter. You made something happen, created something that wasn't there. Probably most people aren't like that. I did the same thing. I'm blessed with that gift of like, I'll figure it out, like you obviously have been, because when I got an internship at WBCN, there was no such thing. I figured I'm going to call this radio station till I can find Norm Weiner and Bob Slavin and make them allow me for free to come in and file records and call record stores. And they like couldn't deny me. The thing with internships also, I found many students who started off with, oh, I want to work at Spotify. I want to work at Red Light. I want to work at Sony. I always try to impress on them. Yes, always, naturally, they're going to go to the places that sound cool. And yet, I would say, and to any of the teachers here, try to find who's mentoring in that company, because it's the mentorship more than it's the company. So I had a student who's now at Sony International New York, who actually came back 3 times to work for me. First as an intern, twice paid, who worked at 2 big companies and had bad internships, really grunt work. And, I could proudly say that we helped her develop her career, because we, made her feel important, asked her opinion, engaged her, and taught her. So that was very important. One thing that Emily just mentioned also, that I've got to get Interning 101. I have to have this book, probably get enough copies to take on the road with me too, to speak to. We'll probably have a larger intern program for the winter, spring. We'll go back again with, and it'll probably be somewhat live, but a lot of virtual. Again, I saw internships being canceled all over. Again, I thank Charlie Walker at C3, because I was speaking with him and he was, Jeff, don't do it. Don't cancel. How about expand it? Put it online. You have a purpose. You're known to have a purpose. You can expand your purpose now. And so our great summer came about from some inspiration from a friend who maybe gave me some encouragement when I was shell-shocked. And, but those skills that Emily mentioned, being on time, being attentive, being responsive, listening, responding, boy, does that go a long way, because it isn't as common as people think. And it does go a long way. I would add, and one of the things that I found more and more that I'm actually disappointed with, that I have to go back to one of my places. Writing skills, spelling and writing skills. Wow. I've had people look at me and say, Jeff, you're old. There's spell check and there's whatever other skill. So you're saying if I want somebody to not misspell and somebody to use proper punctuation and wording, I have to get a journalism student or a law student? Is that what I'm being told today? So I think that's been a failure in some college situations where I've had college graduates who can't write and spell. And again, maybe that really is somewhat old school, but I'm not choosing to believe that right now. I think that that's really important in how you present yourself in a professional way. But
Well, it's got to be important if Emily was just saying that her business runs off of email and Slack and those forms of communication.
yeah,
Yeah.
so does every business, really.
I just want to add, I've only taught a little bit. I taught like 2 classes one semester at NYU, and we didn't really have time for this, but like one of my fantasies for students has always been, and I would do this with permission. So students can't write emails. Like they suck at writing emails. It's not anyone's fault, because who are they emailing? They're emailing like their parents and you guys, basically. Like, with permission, I just want to put my inbox up on a screen and be like, your assignment is to reply to these emails, except to me, to show me what you would say, because it's just practice, right? So consider that, because they're writing emails that are way too long. They've got fonts all over the place. They're missing subject lines. All this stuff is in Interning 101, but that is definitely a task or an assignment that I encourage you to try, just so they get that practice, because they're showing up to us, at internships and in jobs and stuff. Like I said, they've got, massive attachments that are clogging inboxes for us on planes and stuff. So, and it's just because they're not doing it. And the more they do it and they can keep it short and to the point, and think about, the goal is to get a response, right? So I don't want to get emails from, student, and this happens all the time when they're applying for internships. Like, they apply between Christmas and New Year's because they're off, and it's the only time we take off. So again, it's like, tell them to apply, in early January. And I do not need a novel that is their life story, right? Like, and again, I have examples of this in Interning 101. Short, to the point. Here's my PDF resume. Here's why I want to intern for you. And it's not that we don't care about the student, but save your life story about what that we all have about why we love music, and it's our dream to work in this. Save that for the interview, because when you send a 4-paragraph email, it's just not going to get read.
To that point, Emily, yeah, really good point, because that, why do you want to interview there? And then, you did just say save something for the interview. I would add to that, advice to students: do your homework. Do your homework on the place you're applying, because the information's available. Who the company is, what they do, that is available. And that is, to me, that's important. 2 things that are red flags to me are when I get the call from the parent saying my son's looking for an internship, because that's like, oh, okay, well, have them contact me. That's one. The other one is the student that comes in and sits down and says, what do you do here? Like, not good. Not good. So again, and when that wasn't as readily available back in my day, so to speak. But yes.
Or my day. Sorry to interrupt. I'm so with you. Totally.
Be prepared, do your homework, find out about the people and companies that you're applying to. It makes a big difference. And even that sounds like just basic common sense, but even still, next month, some people are still going to make the same mistakes. And it really is it's professionalism, and it's simple, but it's not always done.
I've got a question for.
Well,
Go
again,
ahead.
it's all in Interning 101, but it's like, Jeff said it. It's like, go to every page on the company's website, you know, listen to the clients, check out key people on the company, at the company on LinkedIn, follow them on Twitter. I would tell students it's not stalking if the information is there. And Jeff is exactly right. I don't think anyone except for probably Gideon up there, you know, had access to those resources when we were coming up in our careers. And it is just a wealth of knowledge. So yeah, I'm dating myself, but I think I have an example in the book of like, don't go intern for the Yankees and not know who Derek Jeter is, right? So know what's going on.
Well, that was the question I want to ask is, I'm starting more and more to encourage my students to follow you all, to follow other lines of industry, heads of businesses. I see Gigi's nodding her head. I'm wondering how many of the other educators on the call are doing the same thing, because Jeff, you said know the companies, know the culture, know the people. That's one way that we can help young students understand who these companies are, follow the corporate hashtag, you know, follow individuals in the company. I see lots of agreement. Okay, cool.
I have a question for Jeff. Yeah. Jeff, how do I convince 18, 19-year-olds that something is still happening in radio? Because I can quote them statistics and I can tell them, but it doesn't sink in. They don't believe me.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's a tough one. And because I live with that also. The statistics do say that, you know, radio is much, much stronger, terrestrial radio, than the 18, 19-year-olds think. There are plenty of, there are a number of statistics. I would say that the genre of music and the demographic are huge factors. 15 to 19-year-olds consuming hip hop music, they're not going to WGCI in Chicago for that at all. And you know, there's still been an additional shift in radio listening because of the springtime when the moms who might still have the radio on, taking those kids to high school and grade school, and when school is out and radio listening was down significantly, and radio advertising was down 50 to 70%. I mean, we are in a media landscape where the major broadcast companies, because of their financial situations, two things have happened. They've had to consolidate because of their financial difficulties. So they consolidate their programming. Playlists are homogenized. iHeart has 20 playlists instead of 800. They have more than 20, actually. I shouldn't say that. But Entercom Alternative Cool Music 2 weeks ago consults 14 alternative stations to 6. Just things like that. And disc jockeys are syndicated. So that to me accelerates the process because it's not interesting. And so I see it. So if it's not interesting to the kids, then their younger brothers and sisters don't care because they don't even know it. But the 25, 30 plus person listening to urban music and country music, still very, very strong. And even pop music, I don't even necessarily completely buy into it myself, but top 10 song in top 40 radio in America still has a 50 million audience. It has more gross impressions. If you have a top 40 hit at iHeart, you have more impressions than any other form of media combined. And that's the thing. I like to explain and at least get into those discussions with students on, there's a huge difference between a stream on Spotify and 100 plays a week on a big top 40 radio station. I actually had a manager in Nashville who's close to, who's in his 50s, who gave me like a good look because he manages a lot of country artists, and he was just going through that with me recently because I was just getting more updated on his side of things with country music, and his deep dive analysis into gross impressions versus streams. And but the evolution of media is saying that it's getting worse. I don't know where that goes, how that declines, how Liberty Media, Liberty Media, which will take over iHeart and Entercom, how these companies give way to the streaming services are basically, they're exciting and they're funded, you know. The radio companies are strapped, so they're playing defense, as we said earlier. One set of media is playing offense, one set is playing defense. And even those who say, yeah, but Spotify is not local. Those kids in Des Moines listening to the radio, and I'm like, by the way, the kids in Des Moines don't care either. The kids in Des Moines don't care about some local morning show host because they don't know it, and so it is heading towards it's a big shift now, but seismic, dramatic, absolutely. So last thing for me, I mean, just my as I want to think, I don't want to hold on to what I do in radio as two schools of thought. I can write it out for the rest of my career. I can keep on with radio for what it is. It's more important than young kids think, and write it out and go away. Or I don't have to abandon it, but I can understand where it's going and embrace more and more of where the young people are and live in both worlds. I think that's a better option for me. It's like those who made horses and whips, right? Whatever that is, until for as long as they could. That's more defensive. I struggle with that a bit, by the way, because I have, I know the radio landscape as well as anybody in the business after 40 years of program directors and general managers and music directors and so on and so forth. I have a wide Rolodex in that area. And those people are tough to reach because they're consolidated and they have 3 jobs and they're getting hundreds of emails. And people pay us just to be able to have access to these important decision makers, because there's very few people that can reach Mike Kaplan at WNYL in New York, who now has 12 radio stations underneath him rather than 1. So anyway, I hope that that's a little bit of a wide answer, but the genre, the type of listening these young people are doing, the gross impressions, if you can show what's going on at top 40 radio and country radio, and the gross impressions for hit songs, it's pretty massive still. But I spoke in a class at College of Charleston with Mark Bryan's class, Mark with Hootie and the Blowfish, that got a very lucky call 2 years ago when Darius Rucker said, we're going to do it one more time. Mark got to put a few million more in his pocket. Boy, that was luck. He was a happy guy. But I was with a program director from Charleston, South Carolina, sitting on the couch. And Mark said, turned to the 40 students, how many of you listen to the radio? Like, no hands went up. I was embarrassed for him. Like, oh, I mean, so end of story there. Sure. We're in a, movies versus Netflix, radio versus Spotify, every form of entertainment consumption, video, live, drive-in concerts with Garth Brooks and Andrew McMahon versus headlining festivals. What we have to go as a marketer. My main job is to love music, find what I like and try to get involved, and then go where the audience goes. Even my earliest mentors in radio promotion were like, Hey, Jeff, I don't care what radio station. I go where the people go. Where they go is important to me. So, and that I will stand by that for sure.
Well, what I think is crucial is despite the changing platforms, despite the changing listenership, despite all the change that we're seeing, I want to say thank you both for landing on so many fundamental pieces that we can take back to our student communities. From the communication piece, we have lots of strategies on that, to resilience, to problem solving, to anything else. We might have time for one more question, but then we really do need to let anybody go. Does anyone have any last questions for Emily and or Jeff today?
I can ask another question if no one's going.
Go ahead.
Go for it, Emmett.
Yeah. So it's sort of like a follow-up to my previous question about internships. I guess one thing that we could do as educators is talk to the supervisors at the internships to see if they can be directed as to how to invest into student learning at this day and age with remote learning, because I feel that one thing that kind of falls by the wayside, and you touched upon that, Emily, is you don't have the in-person networking and, sort of like, water cooler moments. And therefore you have to create something else. And supervisors at internship locations, and I know that myself because, we have a club and, we have interns at the club, and not all of our staff is always equipped to sit down with the student to go over what they need to do and how they need to do whatever they need to do, especially if this is remote. So do you recommend talking to organizations and companies and people who act as supervisors to students and see how they could actually learn more from the process? So do you feel that that kind of, not interjection, but like, maybe kind of like guiding the supervisor, specifically for this pandemic, because obviously it's much easier if it's on site, but with remote learning, I feel that sometimes remote internships, I feel that sometimes that's really kind of like falling by the wayside.
You can try, but like, it's going to take a really special person to do that, and I voted. Look, obviously, I really care about students and young people. I'm an educator. I wrote a whole book about it. And I voted. I couldn't be more fortunate to have a COO and a woman named Melanie Shark. Melanie has been organizing team socials, making sure the students are there. That's the time, the students can ask the leaders on our team anything about their careers, about the industry, things like that. I do not have the brain space and time to create or come up with that. So if you came to me and asked me, I'd be like, are you kidding me? I want to see my boyfriend, I want to practice yoga. So a lot of these jobs have infinite tasks. So I hate to say it, I'm just being brutally honest. It's how the intern can, fit into the company culture and learn that way, So maybe you could encourage your students to get together and have a separate student breakout session. Like I said, if you stumble on a Melanie Shark, she'll be like, she's already doing it, So there's going to be some special people that have that gift. I'd like to think I have that gift. I just don't have the time. So I get it warms my heart to hear you say that. I just know, if you come up to someone like me, I'm just going to be like, are you kidding me? I don't have time, so I'm just being honest about the reality of what it's like.
Okay, thank you. I mean, we have to try, we have to do everything, for our students in order to make sure that they maximize the learning experience. And if talking to, the host organization is one thing, then I'm happy to do it. But like you said, they have to be receptive to that idea as well. So it's a two-way street, really.
You can try. You'll find people like Melanie. It's just really hard, and I honestly, my response is like, well, why aren't you guys doing that as the educators? Why can't you set up a breakout group so they can figure it out? We're trying to not have 15-hour days over here already. It's not that we don't care, but that's the point of an internship, is like, we're already taking the time to teach these students how to do things that they otherwise don't know how to do. So I'm just being honest that there's only so many hours in the day. But again, someone like Melanie is really proactive. So those people do exist. Just don't be surprised if you get some pushback on that.
Okay, thank you.
Emily, thank you so much today. Jeff, thank you so much today. And also Chris, Kim, Gideon, Sam, Mehmet, I know Gigi and so many other people are on the call as well. There's a lot to unpack. There's a lot to prepare for as educators in this world, partly because the world is changing and we need to do everything we can to support our young people. So to my fellow colleagues on the call, thank you for fighting the good fight on behalf of our young people. Emily, Jeff, thank you so much for giving an hour of your time to weigh in and support us all in those efforts. Emily, we hope to throw more people to I Voted to help you out in the coming weeks. And Jeff, we hope to see you down the road. So thank you all so much today.
Anytime, Scott. My pleasure. It's great to see you
Thank
all.
you all. Bye,
Kim,
Emily.
Kim, I'm still running. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Be well.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.